Hello, and welcome back to Bedtime Stories with Vice Vice Baby. Tonight, I'll read you a book called Ward Number 6 by Anton Chekhov. Chapter 1. In a hospital yard, there stands a small lodge surrounded by a perfect forest of burdocks, nettles, and wild hemp. Its roof is rusty, the chimney is tumbling down, the steps at the front door are rotting away and overgrown with grass, and there are only traces left of the stucco. The front of the lodge faces the hospital. At the back, it looks out into the open country, from which it is separated by the gray hospital fence with nails on it. These nails, with their points upward, and the fence and the lodge itself, have that particular desolate, god-forsaken look which is only found in our hospital and prison buildings. If you're not afraid of being stung by the nettles, untie the narrow footpath that leads to the lodge, and let us see what is going on inside. Opening the first door, we walk into the entry. Here along the walls and by the stove, every sort of hospital rubbish lies littered about. Mattress, old tattered dressing gowns, trousers, blue striped shirts, boots, and shoes, no good for anything. All these remnants are piled up in heaps, mixed up and crumpled, moldering and giving out a stinky smell. The porter, Nikita, an old soldier wearing rusty good conduct stripes, is always lying on the litter with a pipe between his teeth. He has a grim, surly, battered looking face, overhanging eyebrows which gave him the expression of a sheepdog of the steppes, and a red nose. He's short and looks thin and scraggy, but he's of imposing deportment and his fists are vigorous. He belongs to the class of the simple-hearted, practical, and dull-witted people, prompt in carrying out orders, who like discipline better than anything in the world, and so are convinced that it is their duty to beat people. He showers blows on the face, on the chest, on the back, on whatever comes first, and is convinced that there would be no order in the place if he did not. Next, you come into a big spacious room which fills up the whole lodge except for the entry. Here, the walls are painted a dirty blue. The ceiling is as sooty as in a hut without a chimney. It is evident that in the winter, the stove smokes and the room is full of fumes. The windows are disfigured by the iron gratings on the inside. The wooden floor is gray and full of splinters. There's a stench of sour cabbage, of smoldering wicks, of bugs, and of ammonia. And for the first minute, this stench gives you the impression of having walked into a menagerie. There are bedsteads screwed to the floor. Men in blue hospital dressing gown and wearing nightcaps in the old style are sitting and lying on them. These are the lunatics. There are 5 of them in all here. Only one is of the upper class. The rest are all artisans. The one nearest the door, a tall, lean workman with shining red whiskers and tear-stained eyes, sits with his head propped on his hand, staring at the same point. Day and night he grieves, shaking his head, sighing and smiling bitterly. He takes a part in conversation and usually makes no answer to questions. He eats and drinks mechanically when food is offered to him. From his agonizing, throbbing cough, his thinness, and the flush on his cheeks, one may judge that he's in the first stage of consumption. Next to him is a little, alert, very lively old man with a pointed beard and curly black hair. By day, he walks up and down the ward from window to window, or sits on his bed, cross-legged, and ceaselessly, as a bullfinch whistles, softly sings and titters. He shows his childish gaiety and lively character at night, also when he gets up to say his prayers, that is, to beat himself on the chest with his fists, and to scratch with his fingers at the door. This is the Jew Moiseika, an imbecile who went crazy 20 years ago when his hat factory was burned down. And all of the inhabitants of Ward Number 6, he's the only one who is allowed to go out of the lodge, and even out of the yard into the street. He has enjoyed his privilege for years, but probably because he is an old inhabitant of the hospital. A quiet, harmless imbecile, the buffoon of the town, where people are used to seeing him surrounded by boys and dogs. In his wrenched gown, in his absurd nightcap, and in slippers, sometimes with bare legs and even without trousers, he walks out about the streets, stopping at the gates and little shops and begging for a copper. In one place, they will give him some kvass, in another some bread, in another a copper, so that he generally goes back to the ward feeling rich and well fed. Everything that he brings back, Nikita takes from him for his own benefit. The soldier does this roughly, angrily, turning the Jew's pocket inside out and calling God to witness that he will not let him go into the street again, and that breach of the regulations is worse to him than anything in the world. Moiseika likes to make himself useful. He gives his companions water and covers them up when they are asleep. He promises each of them to bring him back a kopeck and to make him a new cap. He feeds with a spoon his neighbor on the left who is paralyzed. He acts in this way not from compassion nor from any considerations of a humane kind, but through imitation and consciously dominated by Gromov, his neighbor on the right hand. Ivan Dmitrich Gromov, a man of 33, who is a gentleman by birth and has been a quarter usher and provincial secretary, suffers from the mania of persecution. He either lies curled up in bed or walks from corner to corner as though for exercise. He very rarely sits down. He's always excited, agitated, and overwrought by a sort of vague, undefined expectation. The faintest rustle in the entry or shout in the yard is enough to make him raise his head and begin listening. Whether they are coming from him, whether they are looking for him. And at such time, his face expresses the utmost uneasiness and repulsion. I like his broad face, with its high cheekbones, always pale and unhappy, and reflecting, as though in a mirror, a soul tormented by conflict and long-continued terror. His grimaces are strange and abnormal, but the delicate lines traced on his face by profound genuine suffering show intelligence and sense, and there is a warm and healthy light in his eyes. I like the man himself, courteous, anxious to be of use, and extraordinarily gentle to anyone except Nikita. When anyone drops a bun or a spoon, he jumps up from his bed quickly and picks it up. Every day he says good morning to his companions, and when he goes to bed, he wishes them good night. Besides his continually overwrought condition and his grimaces, his madness shows itself in the following way also. Sometimes in the evening, he wraps himself in his dress gown, and trembling all over with his teeth chattering, begins walking rapidly from corner to corner and between the bedsteads. It seems as though he's in violent fever. From the way he suddenly stops and glances at his companions, it can be seen that he is longing to say something very important. But, apparently reflecting that they would not listen or would not understand him, he shakes his head impatiently and goes on pacing up and down. But soon, the desire to speak gets the upper hand of every consideration, and he will let himself go and speak fervently and passionately. His talk is disordered and feverish like delirium, disconnected, and not always intelligible. But on the other hand, something extremely fine may be felt in it, both in the words and in the voice. When he talks, you recognize in him the lunatic and the man. It is difficult to reproduce on paper his insane talk. He speaks of the baseness of mankind, of violence trampling on justice, of the glorious life which will one day be upon earth, of the window gratings, which remind him every minute of the stupidity and cruelty of oppressors. It makes a disorderly, incoherent potpourri of themes old but not yet out of date. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Bedtime Stories with Vice Vice Baby. I hope you'll have a good night and sweet dreams.